So today's video, tapping video, is on grief. And while this video is specifically in mind for the grief that many of us are experiencing um, with the Palestinian genocide and the Israeli lives that have been lost and all of the people who are impacted by what's going on, like with all of my videos, they can be used, they are timeless. They can be used whenever. So the experience and the moment that I am now referring to is specific to what we as a collective, as a society, are experiencing, what we are witnessing, what we are feeling. But if you're catching this video long after, well, I think this has been going on for a long time, but long after this current moment, it will still be applicable. So, like with all of my videos, there are going to be moments where I will voice things that I am picking up on or I'm channeling, and then there's going to be moments when we're tapping where I'm going to offer an opportunity for you to insert your own words, because tapping is always done best when it's your words, when it's your experience. So in the moments where I pause and I'm not speaking and I prompt you, I'd like you to envision or to imagine or feel into what your experience is to make it applicable. Because what I'm seeing now in terms of grief is I'm watching grief happen in real time, and I'm also watching grief, unprocessed grief from generations and generations before now, come to fruition in actions, in behaviors, and beliefs. So it is incredibly important that we are talking about what is going on from a historical context, from a very discerning, informative, intellectual place. But at the same time, so that we don't continue these violent atrocities and these violent realities, we must individually and collectively learn to process our grief. This is not the only way you can do it. This is not even like the right way to do it. It's just a way to do it. So add this to your tool belt, add it to your resource kit. Tapping is so wonderful because it's so simple, it's so accessible, and it can be done around anything, around any time. So with that all said, it's a longer introduction, but it's needed. With that said, given the context, given what we are all dealing with right now, in terms of Palestine, in terms of the Israeli lives that have been lost, I'd like you to close your eyes, and I'd like you to, if there's a specific moment or a memory or visual that you have that is eliciting grief for you, maybe it's a conversation, maybe it's something that you've seen on social media, maybe it's your own experience that you're having, but make it very tangible for yourself. And I'm going to say, don't choose like level 10 right now. If you don't have time to be with that, if you don't have time to process that, I am not there. Another EFT practitioner is not there. You want to do something that's maybe like a level 3 or 4, maybe 5. And if you have time, you can go deeper and you can do this for longer. But I just want to be I want to be cognizant. I want to be mindful of not doing the thing that perhaps is causing you the absolute most pain. So if you want to keep it general, around like where in general you are experiencing grief in your body, that's perfectly fine. But just feel into where your grief exists for you. For me, it's currently in my stomach. So I'm going to be focusing on that. So just feeling into that and rating that intensity on a scale of 1 to 10. And if you're someone who's visual, you might start to visualize what that grief looks like, how it's taking up space in your body. And if you're not visual, I'm not a visual person, just feel into the sensation of your grief. Is it heavy? Is it rough? Is it sharp? Is it dull? Just really like attune to how is this taking up space in my physical body. And like I said, rate that on a scale of 1 to 10. And when you're ready, you can start tapping on the side of your hand. And you can repeat after me either out loud or in your head. And once again, I'm going to say phrases which you're welcome to repeat as is or change if you need to. And then I'm going to be offering opportunities for you to fill in the space for yourself. So tapping on the side of the hand, even though I am feeling all of this grief in my body, I choose to have compassion for myself. And it's okay that I feel this way. And if those words don't work for you, you can say, I accept myself. I'm open to having compassion. Do what feels right for you. So continuing on the side of the hand, even though I'm experiencing all of this grief, and sometimes it feels too overwhelming, I choose to acknowledge my emotional experience. And right here, right now, I'm safe. And continuing on the side of the hand, even though I feel this grief in my body, I feel it in my, and then go ahead and say where you feel it. I choose to have compassion for myself. And right here, right now, I'm okay. I am safe. And it makes total sense why I feel this way. And starting on the eyebrow point, repeating after me, all this grief in my body. Moving to the side of the eye, I feel it in my, and go ahead where you feel. Go ahead and say where you feel your grief. Moving underneath the eye, all this grief in my, go ahead and say it. Moving underneath the nose, it's so overwhelming. Moving to the chin, it feels like I could get swallowed up by it. Moving underneath the arm, it feels so overwhelming. Moving to the top of the head, and sometimes it feels like it won't end. Moving to the eyebrow point, and just tap here for a moment. Feel into where you feel the grief, and I'd like you to breathe into that space. Breathe into where you feel the grief. And release it out through the mouth. Moving to the side of the eye. It's okay for me to feel this level of grief. Moving underneath the eye. It shows the capacity to which I can love and to which I care. Moving underneath the nose. I don't have to fear my grief. Moving to the chin, and I don't need to suppress it. Moving to the collarbone. Grief can be transformative. Moving underneath the arm. Grief can show me my pain and keep me open to other people's pain as well. Top of the head. Grief can keep my heart open if I allow it. Eyebrow point. So I allow myself to give a voice to my grief. Moving to the side of the eye. I allow my grief to communicate what it needs to say. Moving underneath the eye, and just pause here, tapping here for a moment. And I'd like you to say, tune into where you feel the grief. And I'd like you to actually say, if your grief could speak, what would it say? Moving underneath the nose, and just keep tapping here, and no one is around you. I can't see you. And go ahead and say out loud. Yell if you need to, scream if you need to. What is your grief saying? It might be saying, this hurts so much. It might be saying, I feel helpless. I don't know what to do. Moving to the chin. Giving a voice to my grief does not enforce it, but instead validates it. Moving to the collarbone and breathing into that space again, noticing where the grief might be now. Perhaps it's in the same place, perhaps it's moved, and just track. And breathing into that space. Moving underneath the arm, I honor my grief. Moving to the top of the head, but I don't need to become my grief. Eyebrow point, I allow my grief to shape me, to form me, and to inform me. Moving to the side of the eye, but I also allow the grief to move through me. Underneath the eye, I metabolize my grief so I can mobilize my actions. Moving underneath the nose, I metabolize so that I can mobilize. Moving to the chin, my grief is here to teach me, and I remain open to what it has to say. Moving to the collarbone point and just breathing in again to that space where you feel the grief. And saying again, all this grief in and go ahead and name where you feel it. Underneath the arm, I don't need to force it out. I don't need to make it do anything. Moving to the top of the head, I choose to be in relationship to it, to give it a voice, to listen, and to tend to it. Eyebrow point, because the more that I can do this, the more regulated I can feel, the clearer my thoughts can be. Side of the eye. And I don't just clear this grief for myself. I acknowledge it and process it for the collective, moving underneath the eye, and for the generations that will come after me. Underneath the nose, because I know that the grief that stays in my body without processing can impact generations and futures to come. Moving to the chin, so I take pride in my grief. I own it. And I allow it to move through me. Collarbone, I refuse to let my grief become stagnant energy. And stagnant energy becoming trauma. And trauma becoming an identity. Underneath the arm, I allow my grief to be powerful, and I make space for it. Moving to the top of the head, and I let it be a North Star to keep my heart open and to allow me to make decisions that support not only me, but others around me and generations to come. So just take a deep breath. You can stop tapping. And feel into your body now. Notice where that grief might exist within you now. Notice any emotion that might be popping up and let it pop up. I meant to say during that, if you feel tears, to let them come. If you do this again, I'll say it for your next round. Let anything that needs to come out so that you can have the space, so you can create space. The point is to not get rid of the grief. The point is to not throw it away, but to have a relationship with it, to let it inform you, to let it change you. So I hope that this was helpful. You can go ahead and rate. This is late, but you can go ahead and rate on a scale of 1 to 10 where your grief is at now. And you're welcome to do this video whenever it calls to you, whether it's now, days from now, months from now, years from now. So sending you much gentleness and care and